Why did grandfather remove Harrison from the family trust? Ethan asked quietly across the dinner table, and for 3 full seconds, nobody in the room breathed. The chandelier above us glowed softly against the dark wood walls of the Harrison estate, casting long golden reflections across the endless oak table where my family had gathered every Sunday for nearly 40 years. Crystal glasses stood untouched beside silver cutlery polished by James earlier that afternoon. Outside the massive windows, rain slid slowly down the glass overlooking the Connecticut shoreline. But inside the dining room, the silence felt colder than the storm. Harrison sat alone at the far end of the table wearing his faded denim jacket like he didn't belong among the wealth surrounding him. His silver hair looked uncombed as always, his rough hands resting calmly beside an untouched plate of roast beef. Most people assumed he was simply the family embarrassment, the outsider, the forgotten older brother nobody spoke about unless necessary. But that night, when Ethan asked that question, Harrison slowly lifted his eyes for the first time all evening, and I realized something terrifying. He already knew the answer. Isabel stopped pouring wine beside David so abruptly that a drop spilled onto the white linen tablecloth. She smiled immediately afterward, elegant and composed, but her fingers tightened around the bottle. "That's not dinner conversation," she said softly. Her voice always carried the kind of calm that made people obey without realizing it. David loosened his tie and reached for another drink without looking at anyone. The shadows beneath his eyes seemed darker lately. Across from him, Eleanor stared down at her plate beneath the chandelier light, nervously smoothing the sleeve of her pastel cardigan the way she always did when she was hiding something. Nobody answered Ethan directly. Not Victoria, not Thomas, not even James standing quietly beside the fireplace, pretending not to listen. The only sound came from the grandfather clock near the staircase, ticking steadily through the silence. Ethan looked around the room slowly, confusion turning into suspicion. "I'm serious," he said. Grandfather trusted Harrison more than anyone once. "So what happened?" Isabel finally set the wine bottle down with perfect control. "Some stories are better left buried," she replied. Harrison gave a low, dry laugh from the end of the table. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But every person in the dining room immediately went still. Then he leaned back in his chair and looked directly at Ethan for the first time all night. "That," he said quietly, "depends on which betrayal you want to hear first." Nobody spoke after Harrison said those words. The old grandfather clock near the staircase continued ticking into the silence while rain pressed harder against the tall dining room windows. Ethan looked around the table again, waiting for someone to laugh awkwardly or dismiss the comment as another one of Harrison's strange remarks, but nobody did. David reached for his whiskey glass with unsteady fingers and drained it too quickly. Isabel noticed immediately and calmly placed her hand over his wrist before he could pour another drink. "You are exhausted," she said softly. "You should not let old family stories upset you." Her tone sounded caring, almost affectionate, but Ethan noticed the way David instantly obeyed her without argument. It was subtle, almost invisible, but once he saw it, he could not stop seeing it. Eleanor suddenly pushed her chair back from the table. "I think I am tired," she whispered, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. James moved quietly to help her, but before leaving the room, Eleanor glanced toward Harrison for only a second. Fear. That was what Ethan saw in her expression. Not anger, not embarrassment. Fear. Harrison remained seated at the far end of the table beneath the dim chandelier light, studying everyone with tired gray eyes that somehow missed nothing. His work boots rested casually against one of the expensive carved table legs, as though he had no respect for the wealth surrounding him. Ethan had always been told Harrison ruined his own life years ago, that he walked away from the family business after some bitter dispute with Ethan's grandfather. But nobody had ever explained what actually happened. Victoria finally folded her napkin with sharp precision and stood from the table. "This conversation is over," she announced coldly. "We do not dig up the past in this family." Ethan almost responded, but Harrison laughed again under his breath. "That is the problem," he said quietly. "Nobody buried it properly." Isabel immediately stepped between the tension with another elegant smile. "Thomas has an early meeting tomorrow morning," she said smoothly. "And David has enough pressure already." Thomas adjusted his glasses near the fireplace, but remained silent. Ethan noticed that too. The family lawyer usually controlled every conversation in the room. Yet tonight, he looked strangely uncomfortable. As everyone slowly began leaving the dining room, Ethan stayed behind near the staircase pretending to check his phone. James collected empty plates quietly while the fire crackled low against the marble fireplace. Then Ethan heard it. Isabel speaking in a low voice near the hallway entrance. "You should have kept him away from Harrison," she whispered sharply. David sounded exhausted when he answered. "I cannot control Ethan anymore." Isabel paused for only a second. "Then we may already have a problem." Ethan did not sleep that night. Long after the dining room emptied and the Harrison estate fell silent, he remained awake in the guest bedroom overlooking the cliffs behind the property. Rain tapped steadily against the old glass windows while moonlight stretched across the hardwood floor in pale silver lines. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard Harrison's voice again. "Depends on which betrayal you want to hear first." The word stayed with him because nobody in the family reacted with surprise. They reacted with fear. Around 2:30 in the morning, Ethan left his room quietly and walked downstairs barefoot. The mansion always felt different at night. During the day, the estate looked impressive and elegant, the kind of old money property people photographed for magazines. But after midnight, the endless hallways and dark wood walls carried something heavier. Generations of secrets seemed buried inside the house itself. As Ethan reached the first floor, he noticed light, glowing faintly beneath the library doors. He stopped immediately. Voices, low and careful. Thomas stood near the fireplace inside the library holding a folder beneath his arm, while Isabel faced him beside the shelves of leather-bound books. Ethan remained hidden in the hallway shadows near the staircase, barely breathing. "He is asking questions already," Isabel whispered. Thomas removed his glasses slowly. "I warned all of you this would happen eventually." Isabel crossed her arms calmly. Even from a distance, Ethan could see she had not lost control for a second. "The trust cannot survive another scandal," she replied. "Especially not now." Thomas lowered his voice further. "The problem is not the scandal. The problem is Harrison." Ethan felt a chill move through him. Harrison again. Always Harrison. Isabel walked toward the window overlooking the ocean cliffs. "He should have left years ago and stayed gone," she said coldly. Thomas looked genuinely uneasy now. "You know why he came back?" Isabel did not answer immediately. The silence stretched too long. Then Ethan heard another sound behind him. Soft footsteps. He turned quickly and nearly startled when he saw Sophia standing near the hallway entrance holding a folder against her chest. Her dark coat was still damp from the rain outside. "You should not stand in the open like that," she whispered quietly. Ethan stared at her in confusion. "What are you doing here?" Sophia glanced toward the library doors before answering. "Thomas asked me to review some old estate documents earlier tonight." She paused carefully. "But after hearing this family for the last 3 hours, I think the paperwork may not be the real problem here." Inside the library, Thomas suddenly raised his voice enough for them to hear clearly. "If Ethan finds the archive room before we do, everything changes." Ethan looked back toward Sophia slowly. She tightened her grip on the folder and lowered her voice even further. "Do you know where the archive room is?" Sophia waited until the library lights went dark before leading Ethan down the east hallway of the estate. The mansion seemed endless at that hour, its polished floors reflecting dim wall sconces while portraits of long-dead Harrison family members watched silently from gold frames. Ethan followed her past the formal sitting rooms and toward a narrow staircase hidden behind the kitchen corridor. "How do you know this place so well?" he whispered. Sophia glanced back briefly. "Thomas has worked for this family since before I finished law school. I have spent years organizing their estate records." She paused carefully before adding, "Most wealthy families hide financial problems. This family hides something else." The staircase led downward into an older part of the mansion Ethan had never seen before. The air smelled faintly of dust, cedar wood, and ocean moisture trapped inside the stone foundation walls. At the bottom, Sophia stopped beside a locked steel door partially hidden behind shelves of old wine crates. "Archive room," she said quietly. Ethan stared at the heavy lock. "And you just happen to know where it is?" Sophia gave him a tired smile. "In families like this, secrets always need storage space." Before Ethan could answer, footsteps echoed somewhere above them. Both froze instantly. The sound passed after a moment, but Ethan realized his heartbeat had become painfully loud in the silence. Sophia removed a small silver key from inside her coat pocket. "Thomas does not know I copied this years ago," she admitted softly. "I always had the feeling someday someone would need answers." The lock clicked open with a sharp metallic sound that seemed too loud underground. Inside, the room looked less like storage and more like a forgotten museum. Long shelves stretched across the walls filled with document boxes, leather binders, framed photographs, and decades of financial records. Dust floated slowly through the weak overhead light, while old filing cabinets lined the far wall beneath exposed pipes. Ethan stepped further inside and immediately noticed one photograph sitting alone on a wooden desk near the back of the room. He picked it up carefully. The image showed the Harrison family standing outside the estate nearly 20 years earlier. David looked younger. Eleanor smiled naturally. Victoria stood near the center, beside Ethan's grandfather. But one figure had been deliberately cut from the picture with sharp scissors. Ethan slowly turned the photograph over. Written on the back in faded ink were 4 words. "The wrong son stayed." Ethan looked up immediately. "What does that mean?" Sophia stared at the photograph with visible unease. "I do not know," she whispered, "but I think your family spent years making sure nobody asked." Then Ethan noticed another name typed across a nearby file folder, sitting partially open beneath the desk lamp. Harrison. Ethan opened the Harrison file slowly while Sophia stood watch near the archive room door, listening for footsteps above them. The papers inside smelled old, the edges yellowed with time, but someone had handled them recently. Several pages were missing entirely. Others had handwritten notes in dark blue ink Ethan immediately recognized as Thomas's writing. At the top of the first surviving document were the words "Confidential Family Review," followed by a date from 18 years earlier. Ethan sat down at the wooden desk beneath the dim lamp and began reading carefully. The file described a dispute inside the Harrison family trust shortly after Ethan's grandfather became seriously ill. Harrison's name appeared repeatedly beside terms like voting control, inheritance restructuring, and emergency succession authority. None of it matched the version of the story Ethan had heard growing up. According to the family, Harrison had abandoned the company after gambling away money and embarrassing the family publicly. But the documents described something very different. Harrison had objected to changes being made inside the trust. He claimed certain signatures were obtained while Ethan's grandfather was heavily medicated and isolated from outside advisors. Ethan looked up sharply. "This was never about money," he whispered. Sophia remained focused on the hallway. "No," she answered quietly. "It never is in families like this. It is about control." Ethan continued reading while the weak light flickered softly overhead. One memo from Thomas caught his attention immediately. If Harrison proceeds with legal review, exposure risk becomes significant for all parties involved. Ethan frowned. All parties. Sophia stepped closer now, reading over his shoulder. Neither spoke for several seconds. Then Ethan turned another page and found a handwritten letter folded carefully inside the folder. The paper trembled slightly in his hands as he opened it. The signature at the bottom belonged to Eleanor. "Harrison, if you are reading this, then they finally forced you out. I told your father not to sign anything that night. Victoria insisted it was necessary for the family. Isabel convinced David it was the only way to stabilize the company after the losses. I should have stopped them. I should have told Ethan the truth years ago." Ethan stared at the words in disbelief. Isabel was involved 18 years ago. That was before she even married David. Sophia looked equally disturbed now. "That is impossible," she whispered. "She was only working as an outside consultant back then." Ethan slowly lowered the letter. "Then why was she helping control my grandfather's trust?" Before Sophia could answer, the overhead light suddenly switched off. Darkness swallowed the archive room instantly. Ethan froze. A calm voice echoed from the doorway seconds later. "Because some people enter a family long before anyone realizes they already own it." Harrison stood there holding a lantern in one rough hand, his tired gray eyes fixed directly on Ethan. Harrison stepped into the archive room slowly, the lantern light casting long shadows across the stone walls and dusty shelves behind him. Up close, Ethan noticed how tired the old man looked. Not weak, just exhausted in a way that seemed deeper than age. Harrison closed the steel door quietly and placed the lantern on the desk beside the open file. "Thomas told me somebody would eventually come looking," he said calmly. Sophia crossed her arms carefully. You knew about the archive room this entire time? Harrison gave a faint smile. I helped build half of it. Ethan stared at him in disbelief. Then why did everyone say you abandoned the family? Harrison pulled out the old wooden chair across from Ethan and sat down heavily. The denim jacket creaked softly as he leaned forward beneath the dim lantern glow. Because the truth sounded worse, he answered. Ethan pushed Eleanor's letter across the desk toward him. What did Isabel do? Harrison did not touch the paper immediately. Instead, his eyes drifted toward the shelves lined with decades of Harrison family records. Your grandfather built this company from nothing after Vietnam, he began quietly. He trusted family more than lawyers. That was his first mistake. The room remained silent except for the low hum of old pipes running overhead. Harrison finally looked back at Ethan. When your grandfather got sick, Victoria panicked. The company had too much debt hidden behind the public reports. David was not ready to take over. Thomas wanted outside restructuring. Then Isabel arrived. Even saying her name seemed to darken the room somehow. Harrison continued slowly. She was smart, calm, patient. She understood people better than numbers, and she learned very quickly that frightened families hand power to whoever sounds confident. Ethan remembered the way Isabel controlled every conversation at dinner without raising her voice once. Harrison noticed his expression immediately. Exactly, he said quietly. She never needed to force anything. She only needed people to depend on her. Sophia sat down beside Ethan now, listening carefully. But why remove you from the trust? Harrison gave a tired laugh. Because I was the only one who questioned what she was doing. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and removed an old folded document. Ethan recognized Thomas's signature at the bottom immediately. Your grandfather planned to split control differently before he died, Harrison explained. David would inherit the company, but the estate itself, the land, the trust protections, all of it was supposed to remain outside corporate control. Ethan unfolded the paper slowly. One sentence near the center made his stomach tighten. Emergency revision authorized after private consultation with Isabel Laurent. Ethan looked up sharply. Her last name was never Harrison. Harrison shook his head slowly. No, but somehow she became the most powerful person in this house. Long before she married into it. Then he leaned closer beneath the lantern light, his gray eyes colder now than Ethan had ever seen them. And your grandfather realized what she was doing only 3 days before he died. Ethan could not stop staring at the document in his hands. The lantern light trembled slightly across the page while the silence inside the archive room grew heavier by the second. 3 days before he died, he finally asked. Harrison nodded once. Your grandfather called me here in the middle of the night. Same room, same desk. His rough fingers rested quietly beside the old papers. He said he made a terrible mistake trusting people who cared more about protecting the family image than protecting the family itself. Sophia looked toward the steel door uneasily. Did he try to reverse the trust changes? Harrison smiled sadly. He wanted to, but by then, he was isolated from almost everyone except Victoria, Thomas, and Isabel. Ethan thought about the giant dining room upstairs where nobody ever spoke honestly to each other anymore. The realization made his chest feel tight. So they trapped him, he whispered. Harrison shook his head slowly. Not exactly. That is what makes people like Isabel dangerous. She never forces anyone. She simply creates situations where frightened people convince themselves they have no other choice. Ethan remembered David at dinner reaching automatically for permission every time Isabel spoke. Harrison noticed that too. Your father was drowning back then, he continued quietly. The company was losing millions. Victoria feared public embarrassment more than bankruptcy itself. Isabel walked into that chaos and offered stability. Everyone handed her power willingly. Sophia crossed her arms. And Thomas? Harrison looked genuinely disappointed for the first time. Thomas believed he was protecting the family legacy. Lawyers tell themselves that often when they compromise slowly over time. Ethan lowered the document carefully onto the desk. Then why come back now after all these years? Harrison remained silent for several seconds before answering. Because your grandfather left one final protection in place before he died. Ethan frowned immediately. What protection? Harrison reached for another folder near the lantern. Unlike the others, this one looked untouched for years. Dust covered the edges heavily. He slid it slowly across the desk toward Ethan. Written across the top in faded black ink were 4 words: Successor Review, Private Authorization. Ethan opened the folder carefully and froze after reading the first page. His own name appeared beside the trust records. "This makes no sense," he whispered. Harrison leaned back in the chair, watching him closely. "Your grandfather believed the family would eventually destroy itself, protecting secrets. He wanted one person outside their control." Ethan looked up sharply. "Me?" Harrison nodded. "You spent most of your childhood away from this estate. Away from Victoria. Away from Isabel. He believed that mattered." Sophia slowly sat down beside Ethan, reading the pages with growing concern. "If this document is valid," she whispered, "then Ethan has legal authority they never expected." Suddenly, footsteps echoed loudly above them through the old ceiling beams. Multiple voices. Fast movement. Then James's voice reached them faintly from upstairs. "Mr. Harrison, they know Ethan is missing." Harrison extinguished the lantern immediately, plunging the archive room back into darkness. The only light now came from a faint emergency bulb glowing near the ceiling pipes. Ethan heard movement upstairs again. Doors opening. Voices overlapping. The entire mansion sounded awake. "Take the folder," Harrison whispered calmly. Ethan grabbed the documents against his chest, while Sophia quickly locked the steel archive door behind them. "There is another way out," Harrison said quietly. He moved through the darkness with surprising confidence, guiding them deeper into the basement corridor beyond the storage shelves. The narrow passage smelled of damp stone and salt carried in from the ocean cliffs below the estate. Ethan struggled to keep up while his thoughts raced faster than his footsteps. Everything he believed about his family was collapsing piece by piece. At the end of the corridor, Harrison pushed open an old maintenance door leading into the rear garage beneath the mansion. Rain hammered the roof overhead, while vintage cars sat hidden beneath gray covers in the shadows. James stood waiting near the service elevator wearing his dark suit despite the late hour. He looked relieved when he saw Ethan. "They are searching the main floors already," he said quietly. "Mrs. Isabel believes Ethan found something in Thomas's office." Harrison gave a dry laugh. For once, she underestimated him. James handed Ethan a small brass key attached to a leather tag marked Greenhouse. "If anyone asks, you never saw me tonight," he said softly. Ethan stared at him. "You knew about all this too?" James lowered his eyes briefly. "In houses like this, staff always know the truth first. We simply learn not to survive by speaking." The words stayed with Ethan as thunder rolled above the estate. Sophia stepped closer to Harrison. "What happens now?" Harrison looked toward the elevator leading back upstairs. "Now they panic." Ethan frowned. "Why?" Harrison's tired gray eyes fixed on the folder in Ethan's hands. "Because Isabel spent 20 years controlling information. The moment somebody outside her control starts reading the real documents, the entire structure becomes unstable." Before Ethan could answer, the service elevator suddenly chimed upstairs. Voices echoed faintly through the shaft. "Victoria, Isabel, Thomas, coming down." James reacted instantly. "Go, now." Harrison opened the side garage door leading toward the rear gardens of the estate. Cold rain and ocean wind rushed inside immediately. Ethan hesitated only a second before following Sophia out into the storm behind Harrison. From the edge of the gardens, Ethan looked back once at the massive Harrison mansion glowing against the dark Connecticut coastline. Through the tall dining room windows, he could see silhouettes moving beneath the chandelier upstairs. Isabel stood perfectly still at the center of the room, while everyone around her appeared frantic. Even from that distance, Ethan could feel it. She already knew the balance inside the family had changed. Harrison stopped near the stone pathway leading toward the greenhouse and spoke without turning around. "By tomorrow morning," he said quietly, "someone inside that house will betray the others to save themselves." The greenhouse stood at the far edge of the Harrison property, overlooking the dark Atlantic water below the cliffs. Rain rolled softly across the glass roof, while weak yellow lights glowed inside through the fogged windows. Ethan followed Harrison and Sophia through rows of overgrown winter roses and citrus trees that had not been properly maintained in years. The place felt forgotten, hidden away from the polished perfection of the mansion above. Harrison locked the greenhouse door behind them before finally speaking again. "Your grandfather loved this place," he said quietly, removing his wet jacket. Victoria hated it because it reminded him that there were things in life more important than appearances. Ethan set the trust documents carefully onto an old wooden potting table near the center of the room. His hand still shook slightly from everything he had learned that night. "If these papers are real," he said, "then Isabel spent 20 years controlling my family using fear." Harrison shook rainwater from his silver hair slowly. Not fear, dependency. Sophia stepped beside Ethan, studying the documents beneath the dim greenhouse lights. "There is enough here to challenge the current trust structure legally," she whispered. "But the moment this becomes public, the Harrison family reputation will collapse." Harrison laughed quietly to himself. That reputation collapsed years ago. They simply kept polishing the silverware and pretending otherwise. Ethan looked back toward the distant mansion glowing through the storm. For the first time in his life, he no longer saw the estate as a symbol of success. It looked isolated, cold, like a monument built to protect secrets instead of people. Suddenly, headlights appeared moving down the long driveway outside. One black sedan. Fast. Harrison noticed immediately. "That did not take long," he muttered. James burst through the greenhouse door, seconds later breathing heavily from the rain. "Thomas is leaving," he said urgently. He argued with Isabel in the dining room for nearly 20 minutes. Ethan frowned. "About what?" James hesitated only briefly. "Thomas wants to negotiate before the documents surface publicly. Isabel wants everything contained immediately." Harrison walked slowly toward the rain-covered windows. "And Victoria?" James lowered his voice. "Mrs. Victoria locked herself inside your grandfather's study after Thomas threatened to resign." The storm outside intensified, rattling the greenhouse glass overhead. Ethan suddenly understood what Harrison meant earlier. The family was turning against itself already. Years of silence were finally cracking apart. Sophia carefully closed the trust folder. "What do we do now?" she asked quietly. Harrison turned back toward Ethan. The old man looked exhausted, but for the first time all night, there was something calmer in his expression, almost relief. "Now," he said quietly, "you decide whether this family deserves saving." Ethan stared down at the documents one final time while rain hammered against the greenhouse roof and thunder rolled across the Connecticut shoreline. Then he looked back toward the mansion where generations of lies had been hidden behind chandeliers, expensive wine, and perfect dinner conversations. And for the first time in his life, he realized the Harrison family was never destroyed by betrayal alone. It was destroyed by the people who saw the truth and chose silence instead.